Welcome to Coffee with TruCentive, 30 minutes of rewards and incentives, tips, tricks, and best practices. My name's Jim Meyer, and today our coffee talk covers the importance of your incentives message, design, and delivery. With all of the changes in employee, partner, and customer engagement over the past couple of years, we're all trying to maximize the impact of our programs, and so hopefully today I'll show you some tips that will help you improve your programs as well as make your life a little easier. Before we do get started, we respect your time. We always keep our coffees anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes. They're educational. We want to help you with your marketing, sales, research, and HR programs. They're also current. We like to talk about new things, new trends, and techniques to help improve the way you connect and incentivize with your audiences. Your questions are welcome. We'll get to as many as possible. If we don't get to your questions, we'll be sure and follow up via email. A recording of this presentation will be sent to you on Monday. And if you do have a suggestion for a future coffee topic, please send it to marketing@trucentive.com. For today's coffee, we're going to cover a wide range of topics focusing on the message and delivery of your rewards and incentives. We'll cover why your message is as important or even more important than the incentive that you deliver. We'll cover some tips on where to find help with that message if you're struggling. And of course, we'll cover design issues to help make that delivery more memorable. I'd also like to show you a couple fun ideas our customers came up with in the platform. And finally, we'll talk a bit about how to improve the overall delivery life cycle from that first email or SMS message to those additional calls to action to further engagement with your recipients. At TruCentive, we're very fortunate in that we get to work with great customers and view thousands of messages every month. And the fact of the matter is that one of the most important aspects of incentive delivery, the message, is often what customers struggle with the most. Unlike personal giving in business, gifts should be used to amplify the message. The 17th century quote by Pierre Corneille holds true today. The manner of giving is worth more than the gift. This is the mindset that we need to keep when sending rewards and incentives, whether they're to employees, partners, or customers. Your incentive value, delivery impression, and redemption experience equals that emotional value that you provide to the recipient, and the emotional value equals your future engagement. A hastily put together program is evident, so it's important to make sure that we do deliver that message and that gift in a way that maximizes the value of that delivery. There are three principles to digital delivery, whether that's an everyday email or a reward or incentive. First, it must be trustworthy. The recipient has to feel good about opening it. Second, it should be relevant. It's clear to why they're receiving it. They can quickly place the reason, whether that's a great job on a specific project or highlighting the event or activity somebody attended. And finally, it must be personal. It should be personal both to the recipient and from the sender. These 3 points do overlap a bit, but together they maximize the value of your message and that incentive. Having all of the tools to build a trustworthy, relevant, and personal delivery in one place saves time and reduces program costs. Just a little more detail on being viewed as trustworthy. This aspect of your delivery it's pretty straightforward. Whether you're sending via email or SMS, make sure that your brand is recognizable and upfront. As I mentioned a moment ago, make sure the reason for the incentive is evident. We are all trained not to click on phishing links. Finally, if possible, send your message from your domain. TruCentive provides best practices in email and SMS delivery, just as you would implement DKIM or domain keys and SPF, Sender Profile Framework, for your marketing email or your marketing automation platforms. TruCentive provides these same features to allow your organization to send from your domain. The good news is that unlike marketing emails, rewards and incentives have very high through-click rates, so they can actually improve your domain's reputation for other types of emails you're sending. Crafting a memorable delivery experience is more than getting that gift card, payment, or merchandise out the door. We often spend way too much time focusing on what we are giving and not the how. Surprisingly, how a reward or incentive impacts the recipient or makes them feel is generally 40% based on the incentive choice and the value of that incentive. The other 60%, or the more important part, is based on the delivery and the message that goes along with it. The two combined together convey our opinion of the incentive, the activity, and that of the recipient. For example, if you're sending a generic message via a merchant's website like Amazon, it says a lot to the recipient, and it's not all good. And while it's nice that it was sent, it doesn't maximize the value of the incentive, so it's not a great way to motivate an employee, a prospect to take a meeting, or even just to say thank you. Now, let's take a little time to talk about the personalization aspects of your delivery. With the goal of continued engagement, we're trying to build a relationship. So everything we can do to help create a warm, trusted communication gets us one step closer. We see dynamic content in emails all the time. Typically, first name might be company, other dynamic tags that you add to those emails. But you can also add dynamic images. Studies show that women, babies, animals, and attractive people sell. Sorry guys, team or division names are a great way for internal type programs. You also want to personalize from the sender. Who's it coming from? First name, last name, company. This also ties into being a trusted email. And you can also use custom fields to hold any data or URLs. So if you have URLs to images or other information that's associated with that recipient, you can include that in the design of your deliveries. You can put custom personal messages in, or once again, different images links depending on the type of person that you're delivering to. Here's an example of using personalization very effectively. In this case, managers provided a quick message that was specific to each recipient. They didn't need to say anything earth-shattering, just specific enough to let the recipient know the message was for them and not a generic broadcast. When the list of employees was uploaded into the system, a custom field was created and that personal message was added to that field so that that insertion tag would add it to the body of the message of each one of their recipients. Note that the messages came from their immediate managers and also included personalization there as well. Sometimes finding the right words for your program can be a challenge, and there's no reason you need to start from scratch. There are many resources available to help you convey that memorable message and to help you build that relationship. Note that while crafting your message, you may want to consider demographic options if you're sending to a large audience. For example, generational issues. We're seeing more and more organizations altering their messages to maximize the impact on boomers versus Gen X versus Gen Z audiences. Here are just a few of the resources you can use to help craft that perfect message. Every time I get a well-written message, I drop it in a folder for future reference. A quick Google search of thank you note examples or sending the perfect congratulations yields lots of options. Once again, don't forget to take advantage of making it your own with personalization. Before we close on messaging, here are a few tips that I like to think about before I finalize my messaging, because I do have a tendency to stray from my main point or forget that the goal of the message is to develop a conversation or a relationship. First, clearly state the reason for your gift. This helps eliminate gift guilt, and gift guilt is when someone gets a reward for, say, taking a survey or reviewing your product, and they feel like they should have done it anyway because they're a customer. There's lots of reasons for gift guilt, but if you do clearly state that reason, you're much more likely to have that recipient claim that reward or incentive. Clear copy versus clever copy. While clever copy can be really fun, just remember if you have a diverse audience, it may not play well with everyone. This is especially true when you start using slang across cultures. Shorter messages perform better. Focus on no more than 2 actions. One typically is going to be to claim their incentive. The next one is going to be your secondary call to action. If you're using one, that can be in the primary message or it could be in your follow-up message. And make sure that those images serve the message and work with that message. Remember, everybody's programmed to stop reading, so we've got to capture their attention, keep it short, and get their attention to claim that incentive. This is just a quick reminder, don't forget to reinforce your brand throughout your communications, whether it's internal or external, and do it right. TruCentive has all the tools to stylize your messages, your landing pages, your reminders, all in the same fashion that you would do for both internal company and external communications. Remember that images have to support your incentive. Images based on loaded URLs or whatever approach you take. I'd like to share just a quick couple examples of some projects that customers have done, and I brought them in, I kind of generic sized them, but you can have a lot of fun and get very creative with your images. Here we can see we're inside of TruCentive, we just opened a project, and in the design, you can see that we have a sample template here, pretty standard stuff. But down below, we can see we've got 2 images here. One of them pointing to the side and one of them pointing down. Well, what they did is they actually used these images dynamically and hid the gentleman pointing on mobile and the woman pointing on desktop. And the result is you can see how the display shows up with the gentleman pointing at the cards on the desktop, but on mobile, it's a woman pointing down. All of the templates are 100% responsive, so they respond well to these types of strategies. Here's just another approach where an animated GIF image was added to the project, and it's just a woman pointing down at the cards below to grab that attention. And it's just a fun way to add to your messaging. We also have customers around the holiday that use messages from the CEO when they're sending out gifts to all their employees, jingles, all kinds of fun stuff you can do with dynamic images or adding images or video to your emails and or your landing pages. One of the key ways to reinforce your brand and your message is through your reminders. And on average, only 74% of incentives are claimed on that first delivery. And this is why companies that offer you rewards and incentives delivery for free typically don't send reminders. And that's because they keep the breakage on the unclaimed incentives. And that may be up to 40% of your cost in some cases. So you set the time frame for your reminders. But here's a typical scenario, and remember, they can all be the same, or you can do different designs depending on your goal. Here's an example of setting up your reminders and follow-up messages. It's really easy to do. They can all be different. You can include different subject lines, different designs. They can be sent if someone has not viewed an incentive yet, but if they have viewed it, they will not get the reminder. You can do it if they've viewed but not claimed the incentive. And then you can add a follow-up after they claim their incentive. I'll go into this more in a few minutes. Now, let's talk a little bit about the recipient experience. You sent your message and you're now amplifying it with that reward or incentive. And this is a stage where a lot of vendors will give your recipients heartburn. I sometimes think they do it because they want to keep the breakage, but in reality, we want to make sure that that redemption process is as seamless as possible. Choose my card and go. No email addresses, no other information. Note that when it does come to choice, there can be too much of a good thing. If you curate a selection, try to keep it under 10 items. Choice studies show that If someone chooses the same item, for example, an Amazon card, from a group of 10 options versus 50 options, they're more likely to be satisfied as they won't second guess their decision later. We don't want any negative or uncertain feelings associated with our brand or the process. Another recipient experience option is sending the whole catalog, and sometimes this is easier when you're sending internationally. A lot of brands don't cover all countries, so it's sometimes easier for the recipient to choose their country and then use the different brands option to find the brand that they'd like to have and select that card in their country. Of course, only brands will show up that fit the price range of the incentive that you're delivering, but it lets you cover a wide range of countries very easily. It's also great if you have variations in your recipients, whether it's job level, nationality, interest. It's really up to you on what approach you want to take. Some companies will curate a set of cards, for example, in the country, their home country, because their largest audience is there, and then for anyone international, go ahead with the whole catalog option. Once you've launched your program, you have complete visibility into the status of every incentive delivered, including whether it was viewed, it was claimed, or even which item was claimed if it's a recipient's choice. That said, you may wonder about why recipients didn't claim their incentive, and there are several reasons. First, delivery issues totally make sense. If a recipient leaves a company, might get caught in their spam filter and they don't look at it, and that's just money wasted. Over choice or overload, this is where you just offer so many choices, people get paralyzed and they move on to something else because they don't want to make a decision right now. And then finally, I talked about gift guilt a little bit, and that's just where somebody doesn't feel like they should take a gift if they feel like they should have done that task anyway. And once again, a survey, a review, maybe it's a beta program. The other reason is I just forgot. We're all busy, and it just got lost in the email and never got back around to it. The good news is that we let you set the expiration on that delivery, and if that incentive isn't claimed, those funds automatically flow right back into your account. Here's just some sample redemption rates, both with and without reminders on different types of programs across your organization. And when you're looking at your programs, you're just going to want to look at this and determine or consider your total program cost after you get those returns back, because very often you will have a certain percent that do drop out of that program, and those funds are once again returned to your account. I thought you might like to see a quick snapshot of how organizations are using incentives in 2022 so far. 64% of the incentives today are being used by the sales and marketing department, which is the lion's share, but we're also seeing increases in product marketing at 9%, customer support at 10%, and HR at 12%. And I think this is because companies are trying to keep those employees engaged. We still have remote workers, and so having them participate in company events, company activities, incentives are a great way to stimulate that activity. It's important to choose an incentive that is appropriate, and hopefully you can tie it to your overall program strategy in the form of some type of theme. Appropriateness can be broken up into value and your relationship. With regard to value, you want to make sure that the value is commensurate with your ask, if it's an activity, webinar, a survey, a review, and or that particular event. It's also important to note that value is different around the world. So for example, if you have engineers in Silicon Valley and you have engineers in India, and you both provide them with $100, because of the pay scale differences, they're going to view those very differently. One of the big advantages to using a product like TruCentive is that you can actually load lists with different values for each recipient, depending on where they are, their pay scale, who they are. Also consider the relationship. We don't want to damage a relationship with an inappropriate incentive, so it may be different if it's a customer, and that also can tie into value as well. One of the most important aspects of rewards and incentives is immediacy of delivery. Immediate rewards strengthen that association with the activity or the event. I think if you have two key takeaways for effective rewards, it's to make them immediate, and secondly, to use them often. If you're on a budget, think about more frequent low value rewards instead of that end of the year holiday reward, for example. Delayed rewards tend to put doubt in the minds of our expecting recipients, and we don't want to have any negative feelings associated with our programs. Finally, I wanted to close with a few thoughts on follow-up messages and in using them to further your engagement, whether that be with employees or customers. It really doesn't matter. Follow-up messages can be delivered at your set time frame after the incentive is claimed. So you can choose whether it is tied to that incentive and send it instantly, or you might want to wait a couple days and divorce it and follow up after that incentive. And that could be a simple text message from a salesperson, or it could include a secondary call to action from your HR department. It's really up to you on how you want to use that, but that follow-up message is really designed to keep that engagement going. It's always easier to ask someone for something when they've just received a token of your appreciation. Once again, typically follow-up messages are to further our engagement with employees, customers, partners, and while a thanks again message is beneficial to building those relationships, the three most common secondary calls to action that we see are from HR, and those are typically how are we doing, from sales to schedule a meeting, and then finally from marketing, and that's really to get people to participate in another survey, webinar, or review. Here's an example of an additional call to action. On the left, we can see the email providing the incentive, and it has a secondary call to action up top and the primary call to action down at the bottom. We have our recipient choice in the middle. Very often, recipients will go ahead and take that secondary call to action off of this email, but on the right, we also have that follow-up email after that primary call to action with that give us that survey feedback secondary call to action. Well, it does look like we have some time for questions, and we have quite a few, but if you have a question, be sure and enter it. If we don't get to all of our questions, we'll be sure and follow up with you via email. Let's see. The first question we have today is, do you integrate with survey tools? And the answer is yes. We have integrations with several different options. We probably have the most seamless integration with SurveyMonkey. It allows you to connect different surveys to different projects, so you can be running multiple surveys simultaneously with completely different reward schemes and reward options. We also have Zapier integration, where you can connect to literally hundreds or thousands of different applications, including all the popular survey tools. The next question is, what is the typical expiration period for a project? This varies a little bit. Typically on consumer-facing programs, I'd say most common is probably 90 days. If it's an internal anniversary program or birthday gift at a company, I'd say it's probably similar. Other programs that are company to company, B2B, I would say most popular amount of time is 30 days after the incentive's been delivered. And of course, the nice thing about that is that any delivery that is not claimed automatically flows back into your account. Let's see, it looks like we have time for one more question. Do you integrate with CRM systems such as HubSpot? Yes, the answer is yes. We have integrations with a variety of different CRM systems. HubSpot is actually the tool we use. We've also used Salesforce, and integration with them it's very quick and easy to implement. The nice thing is we're flexible enough that you can implement the way that you prefer, rather than
a standard set of rules, whether that might be dropping into campaigns or any particular strategy you might have, we can accommodate. We can actually deliver rewards based on changing data in a specific field. So there's lots of options there. It's a great way to enable your sales team and to be able to automate your overall sales and marketing practices. Well, that's all the time we do have for today. Thank you so much for joining. We appreciate your time, and please look forward to our future Coffee with TruCentives. Thanks so much. Take care.